Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone." Evelyn smoothed down her crimson dress for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Her cousin's wedding had become a parade of picture-perfect couples. And she, well, she was playing the role of the family's eternal single, collecting pitying stares like wedding party favors. "Evelyn, darling." Aunt Margaret's voice cut through the outdoor reception like a rusty saw, still without a +1. What a shame for such a bright girl. Evelyn's jaw clenched. 28 years old, successful digital marketing firm owner, downtown penthouse with a view of the Chicago River, and all the family saw was her naked ring finger. Her entire existence seemed to boil down to her relationship status on dating apps. Actually, Aunt Maggie, she absolutely brought someone. Cousin Beatrice appeared like a vulture circling prey, wearing a shark's grin. "Didn't you, Evelyn? Where's this special guy?" Perfect. Beatrice knew exactly what game she was playing. Their rivalry stretched back to childhood birthday parties. But now Beatrice was marrying a plastic surgeon, while Evelyn was about to be exposed as the fraud who posted on Instagram about bringing her incredible partner to the wedding. "He's checking his messages," Evelyn improvised, feeling sweat bead along her hairline. "How wonderfully convenient." Beatrice laughed. "Well, since the whole family's here, why not make introductions? Everyone's absolutely dying to meet this mysterious boyfriend." That's when Evelyn saw him approaching. Grandfather Winston, family patriarch, 84 years old and CEO of the largest construction empire in the Great Lakes region, walked over with that specific smile he saved for life-changing announcements, the same expression he'd worn when revealing he'd set aside an extraordinary inheritance for the first grandchild to bring home someone worthy of joining the family legacy. $40 million, that was the extraordinary inheritance the family had been whispering about in corners for months. "My dearest granddaughter," Grandfather Winston opened his arms wide. "Beatrice tells me you finally found someone remarkable. Where is this young man? I must meet him immediately." Evelyn felt every family member's gaze laser focus on her. Cousins, aunts, uncles, wedding guests, all waiting to witness the man who had allegedly won over the family's notorious commitment phobe. The silence felt deafening. He's family gathering." Beatrice clinked her crystal glass. "Evelyn's about to introduce her boyfriend. Everyone, circle up." It happened like a nightmare in slow motion. The entire extended family, at least 70 people, started closing in, forming an expectant ring around Evelyn. Cell phones materialized. Someone started a Facebook live stream. Evelyn glanced at her watch. 5:23 p.m. $1 for the big reveal, Beatrice announced, clearly savoring every second. "After that, we'll all know he's fictional, right?" Evelyn's heart hammered so violently she worried it might be visible through her dress. 70 pairs of eyes trained solely on her, anticipating Grandfather Winston adjusting his glasses for the best view. Beatrice, wearing that look of someone holding all the winning cards, watched as Evelyn spun, desperately hunting for any escape route. That's when she spotted him near the garden's edge, back turned to the celebration, a tall figure with broad shoulders, completely absorbed in an intense phone conversation, immaculate navy suit, authoritative posture, precisely styled dark hair. He appeared utterly oblivious to the chaos erupting behind him. 5:24 p.m. 30 seconds. "Evelyn," Beatrice called out gleefully. Evelyn threw caution to the wind. She marched toward the stranger with the determination of someone literally fighting for their reputation, or at least their sanity. 20 seconds. The man remained facing away, speaking in clipped, professional tones. "Absolutely not. I've been crystal clear. Nothing under 22 million for that development. Either accept my offer," or Evelyn came up behind him, and without a moment's hesitation, grabbed his free hand. The man spun around like he'd been struck by lightning. Intense gray eyes, sharp jawline, wearing the expression of someone who'd just witnessed the impossible. "Excuse me, but what exactly do you think you're doing?" His voice carried unmistakable authority. That particular tone Evelyn immediately recognized from someone used to instant obedience, rich, arrogant, probably owned half the city, and expected everyone to bow and scrape. Absolutely ideal. 10 seconds. Beatrice's voice pierced the air. Evelyn gripped his hand tighter and whispered frantically, "Please, just pretend we're dating for 1 minute. 60 seconds. Then you can sue me. Call security. Press charges. Whatever you want. But right now, are you completely out of your mind?" He tried to yank his hand free, but Evelyn held on like her life depended on it. "Please, Evelyn looked straight into those gray eyes, and for just a moment, she caught something she hadn't expected. Amusement. 3, 2. The man looked at Evelyn, then at the crowd shouting the countdown. Then back at Evelyn. 1, he sighed, pocketed his phone, and, to Evelyn's complete shock, interlaced his fingers with hers. 0. Everyone, Evelyn shouted, pulling the man forward. I'd like you to meet my boyfriend, Upanich. She didn't even know his name. Grayson, he supplied smoothly, flashing a smile that looked purely practiced. Grayson Holt. The silence that followed was absolutely crushing. Someone's wine glass crashed to the stone patio. Grandfather Winston looked thunderstruck. Beatrice appeared to have swallowed her own tongue, and Evelyn stood hand in hand with the most arrogant man she'd ever encountered, pretending to be his girlfriend in front of her entire extended family. What could possibly go wrong? Grayson Holt couldn't believe what he'd just done. In 34 years of existence, he had never gotten himself into such a ridiculous situation. So, the elderly man, who was clearly the family patriarch, broke through the stunned silence. Grayson Holt. That name rings a bell. Of course, it rang a bell. Grayson owned the development company that was reshaping Chicago's skyline. His name appeared on billboards, business journals, Forbes lists. Holt Development Group, he answered automatically, feeling Evelyn's palm grow clammy against his. Grandfather Winston nearly dropped his walking cane. Holt Development? The Grayson Holt who built the Winston Tower downtown, among other projects? Yes, sir. Evelyn stared at him with an expression that clearly screamed, "You didn't mention you were that Grayson Holt." And he hadn't mentioned it because she hadn't given him time. Actually, she hadn't even asked. She'd simply latched onto his hand like it was the last helicopter out of a disaster zone. Well, I'll be. The older woman who'd apparently orchestrated this whole circus clapped her hands together. Evelyn, you didn't tell us you were dating a celebrity. Celebrity? Grayson almost snorted. If they only knew he'd just walked away from a meeting where he'd rejected a $30 million offer, because he considered it pocket change. Evelyn's always been modest, he improvised, squeezing her hand in silent warning. She doesn't like making a big deal about things. Evelyn nearly choked. She, who had literally kidnapped a stranger to masquerade as her boyfriend in front of 70 relatives, was modest. How long have you two been together? The question came from Beatrice, who looked like she was watching her perfect wedding day crumble before her eyes. 4 months. Evelyn blurted out. 8 months, Grayson said simultaneously. Awkward silence descended like a lead blanket. 4 months exclusively. Grayson recovered smoothly, sliding his arm around Evelyn's waist with practiced ease. 8 months since we first met. Nice save, Evelyn thought. For a man she'd basically ambushed, he was proving surprisingly adaptable. How romantic. Aunt Margaret was practically melting. And where did you meet? Evelyn and Grayson locked eyes. Neither had prepared a backstory. It was at a, Evelyn started, business conference. Grayson finished, conference. Evelyn agreed quickly. He was the keynote speaker for marketing professionals. Not entirely false. Evelyn actually did run a marketing firm, and she was certain a man like Grayson Holt probably spoke at industry events all the time. What a beautiful coincidence. Grandfather Winston tapped his cane enthusiastically. Business and romance, just like your grandmother and me. Evelyn. We met when she designed the logo for my first construction company. Grayson felt Evelyn relax slightly beside him. Apparently, their story had passed family inspection. When's the engagement? The question shot out from a woman Grayson couldn't identify, but judging by Evelyn's deer in headlights expression, she was definitely significant. We haven't, Evelyn began. We're taking things slow, Grayson intercepted diplomatically, getting to know each other's families first, building a solid foundation. Smart answer, Evelyn had to admit. The man had serious, smooth, talking skills. Very wise, Grandfather Winston nodded approvingly. A man who thinks long-term. Evelyn, you've chosen well. That's when Grayson felt the full weight of the situation crash down on him. This wasn't just some harmless white lie to save Evelyn from family embarrassment. Based on how the old man was talking, the way everyone's eyes lit up when they looked at them, there was serious money involved here. Life-changing money. Grayson, Grandfather Winston approached, leaning on his cane. How about we chat privately later? I have some fascinating opportunities to discuss business, family, investments, that sort of thing. Dang it. Grayson recognized that tone. It was the same voice businessmen used when they wanted to propose mutually beneficial partnerships. He glanced at Evelyn, who had gone pale as Beatrice's wedding dress. Certainly. Mr. Winston, Grayson replied, because refusing would seem incredibly rude. Excellent. After the ceremony, I have a study here at the estate. Grandpa, Beatrice interrupted, clearly trying to regain control of her hijacked wedding. Maybe let Grayson enjoy the reception first. No need for business talk today. Nonsense. Grandfather Winston waved his granddaughter off. Successful men always have time for golden opportunities. Grayson felt Evelyn shiver beside him. Actually, shiver. He looked down and saw she was on the verge of a complete panic attack. "Excuse us," he said politely. "I need to get Evelyn something to drink. She looks a bit overwhelmed." Before anyone could object, Grayson guided Evelyn away from the crowd of curious relatives. "All right," he said once they reached a secluded corner of the garden. "You need to explain what the heck is happening here." Evelyn took a shaky breath. "Look, I know this seems insane." "Seems insane?" Grayson interrupted. "You literally hijacked my hand in front of 70 people. Technically, it was borrowing without permission." Grayson stared at her with an expression that clearly said, "Are you serious right now?" Evelyn sighed. "Fine, it was completely crazy, but you don't understand the pressure. The whole family constantly harasses me about being single. Beatrice parades around like she's won the Nobel Prize for marriage. And I might have exaggerated about bringing someone to the wedding, and so you decided to grab the first random guy you saw." "You weren't random," Evelyn protested. "You were perfectly dressed, obviously successful, and you looked like someone who could handle himself in a crisis." "Handle myself in a crisis?" Grayson's eyebrows shot up. "Lady, you are the crisis." Evelyn winced. He had a point. "Besides," Grayson continued, "what's this about your grandfather wanting to discuss opportunities? How much money are we talking about here?" Evelyn's face flushed crimson. "It's complicated. Uncomplicate it now." She looked around nervously, then leaned closer. "Grandfather Winston has been saying for months that he's going to leave a massive inheritance to the first grandchild who brings home someone worthy of the family name." "How massive?" $40 million. Grayson's brain short-circuited. $40 million? "Give or take a few million," Evelyn mumbled. "Are you telling me," Grayson said slowly, "that I just accidentally entered myself into some kind of inheritance lottery by pretending to be your boyfriend? When you put it like that, it sounds really bad, because it is really bad." Grayson ran his free hand through his hair. "What happens when your family finds out we're not really dating? What happens when they discover you made the whole thing up?" Evelyn's face went from red to green. "I hadn't thought that far ahead." "Of course you hadn't." Grayson looked back at the wedding reception, where Grandfather Winston was already deep in conversation with several other family members, probably planning the business discussion. "This is a disaster. I know. But maybe we could just get through today. You know, smile for photos, dance to one song, and then tomorrow we have a mutual breakup." Grayson laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think it's going to be that simple? Your grandfather wants to talk business with me. Your entire family thinks we're serious. Beatrice is probably already planning our engagement party." As if summoned by her name, Beatrice appeared beside them with 2 champagne flutes and a suspicious smile. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything important," she said sweetly. "I just wanted to personally welcome Grayson to the family." Evelyn and Grayson exchanged panicked glances. "And Grayson," Beatrice continued, her smile turning predatory, "I'm sure you'll love hearing all about Evelyn's interesting dating history." Uh-oh. Grayson could practically see the trap being set. "Actually," he said smoothly, "I find Evelyn's past quite fascinating. She's full of surprises." Beatrice's smile faltered slightly. "Really? Even the part about how she's never had a relationship last longer than 3 months?" The words hung in the air like a ticking bomb. Evelyn felt her face burn with embarrassment. Grayson felt his fake boyfriend act getting more complicated by the second. And somewhere in the distance, Grandfather Winston was approaching with a determined gleam in his eye and what looked like business documents in his hand. This was about to get much worse. Grayson felt like he was standing in quicksand that was rapidly pulling him under. Beatrice's revelation about Evelyn's 3-month dating pattern hung in the air like a neon warning sign, and Grandfather Winston was marching toward them with papers that probably contained more zeros than Grayson's last tax return. 3 months. "Huh?" Grayson murmured to Evelyn, maintaining his smile while speaking through clenched teeth. "I can explain," Evelyn whispered back. "Children," Grandfather Winston's voice boomed across the garden. "Perfect timing. I have some preliminary documents I'd love Grayson to review." Documents at a wedding reception. This man was serious about his $40 million. "Grandpa," Beatrice interjected with fake sweetness, "surely business can wait. After all, Evelyn and Grayson are still in their honeymoon phase. Though," She paused dramatically. I suppose with Evelyn's track record, you might want to move quickly before the inevitable happens. Evelyn's face went 3 shades redder. Grayson felt something unexpected surge through him. Protective anger. Who did this cousin think she was, humiliating Evelyn like that? Actually, Beatrice, Grayson said smoothly, stepping closer to Evelyn and pulling her against his side. Evelyn's past relationships ended because she was waiting for the right person, someone who could match her intelligence, her ambition, her incredible ability to surprise people. He looked down at Evelyn, and for a moment, their eyes locked. She just needed someone who appreciated her spontaneous nature. Evelyn stared up at him, completely stunned. Was he actually defending her to her awful cousin at a fake relationship? How romantic, Beatrice said flatly, clearly not expecting that response. Indeed, it is, Grandfather Winston beamed, completely missing the underlying tension. Young love reminds me of my courting days. Speaking of which, Grayson, these partnership proposals, Grandpa Winston, Evelyn interrupted desperately. Maybe we should let Grayson enjoy the wedding first. The poor man just traveled here. From where did you fly in from, honey? Grayson realized this was a test. She was giving him a chance to create distance, to make an excuse to leave. New York, he said instead, doubling down on the lie. But I wouldn't miss meeting Evelyn's family for anything. In fact, Mr. Winston, I'd be honored to discuss business with you. Evelyn's jaw dropped. Was he insane? Why was he making this worse? Wonderful. Grandfather Winston clapped his hands. But first, the traditional family photo. Everyone, gather around the happy couple. Before either Evelyn or Grayson could protest, they were swept into a whirlwind of family photography. Aunts positioned them. Uncles adjusted Grayson's tie. And Beatrice stood off to the side with a look that could curdle milk. Closer together, Aunt Margaret commanded, "You're supposed to be in love." Grayson's arm tightened around Evelyn's waist. She could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy, that made her inexplicably dizzy. "Evelyn, put your hand on his chest." Someone shouted, "Grayson, look at her like she's the only woman in the world. Now, kiss her forehead." The photographer's commands kept coming, and somehow Evelyn and Grayson found themselves getting lost in the performance. When he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear for the camera, his fingers lingered just a second too long. When she laughed at something, he whispered a joke about escaping through the garden maze. Her laughter was genuine. "Perfect," the photographer announced. "You two are naturals." That's when it hit both of them simultaneously. They were good at this. Really good. "All right, everyone." The wedding coordinator's voice cut through the photo session. "Time for the ceremony. Please take your seats." As the family dispersed, Evelyn and Grayson found themselves alone again, still standing unusually close. "So," Evelyn said quietly, "you didn't have to defend me to Beatrice like that." "She was being a witch," Grayson replied, surprising himself with his honesty. Nobody deserves that kind of public humiliation, even someone who grabs strangers' hands at wedding receptions. Grayson looked down at her, and she caught something in his expression she hadn't expected. Amusement. Yes, but also interest. "Especially someone brave enough to grab a stranger's hand at a wedding reception," he said. "That takes serious courage or serious desperation. Definitely desperation." Evelyn admitted with a laugh. "Evelyn, Grayson," Aunt Margaret was waving them toward the ceremony seating. "You're in the family section, front row." As they walked toward their seats, Grayson leaned down to whisper in Evelyn's ear, "We need to talk strategy. Your grandfather isn't going to be satisfied with handshakes and small talk." "I know," Evelyn whispered back. "I'm freaking out." "Don't freak out. We're going to figure this out." "We?" Evelyn looked up at him in surprise. "Well, I'm already in this mess up to my neck. Might as well see where it goes." They settled into their front row seats just as the music began. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. Beatrice looked stunning, the groom seemed genuinely smitten, and the garden setting was like something from a magazine, but Evelyn couldn't concentrate on any of it. All she could think about was the man sitting beside her, who smelled amazing, had defended her against Beatrice, and was now apparently willing to continue this charade for reasons she couldn't understand. Halfway through the vows, Grayson's phone buzzed quietly. He glanced at it, and his face went pale. Evelyn noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" she whispered. Grayson showed her the screen. It was a text from his business partner. "Saw the wedding photos already posted on Instagram. Since when are you dating? And isn't that the Winston family? Call me as soon as possible." "Oh no," Evelyn breathed. "Social media. They both slowly turned to look behind them. Half the wedding guests had their phones out, posting photos and videos in real time. Photos of them together. Photos with captions like, "Power couple alert," and "Evelyn Winston lands Chicago's most eligible bachelor." "We're trending," Grayson muttered, scrolling through his tagged photos. "How are we already trending?" "The Winston name carries weight in Chicago," Evelyn whispered miserably. "And your name? Well, you're basically business royalty. This is getting out of hand." "I know. I'm sorry. We can end this right now. Just stand up, say you feel sick, and leave. I'll tell everyone we broke up tomorrow." But instead of standing up, Grayson put his phone away and reached for Evelyn's hand. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Damage control," he murmured. "If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Half measures will just make this worse." "Do what right?" Grayson turned to look at her, his gray eyes serious. "Be the most convincing fake couple Chicago has ever seen." The officiant's voice rose as the ceremony reached its climax. "You may kiss the bride." As Beatrice and her new husband kissed, the crowd erupted in applause. And in that moment, with everyone focused on the happy couple, Grayson leaned down and whispered something that made Evelyn's heart stop. "When we get to the reception, follow my lead, and whatever happens, don't let go of my hand." Evelyn stared up at him, realizing that somewhere in the last hour, this had stopped being about escaping embarrassment and started being about something else, entirely something that felt dangerously real. As rice and flower petals filled the air around them, Evelyn made a decision that would change everything. She squeezed Grayson's hand and whispered back, "I'm in." The wedding reception was like stepping into a perfectly orchestrated hurricane. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, a jazz quartet played softly in the corner, and elegantly dressed guests mingled around tables adorned with crystal and white roses. It should have been romantic and peaceful. Instead, Evelyn felt like she was walking into a minefield while wearing tap shoes. "Remember," Grayson murmured as they approached the reception tent, "we've been dating for 4 months, exclusively. 8 months total. We met at a business conference. You run a marketing firm. I do development. We're taking things slow, but we're serious about each other." "Got it," Evelyn whispered back, then paused. "Wait, what's my favorite thing about you?" "What?" "People always ask couples that. What's my favorite thing about you supposed to be?" Grayson considered this for exactly 3 seconds. "My devastating charm and incredible business acumen, that's 2 things and terrible." "Fine. My ability to stay calm under pressure," Evelyn snorted. "You mean like how you stayed calm when I grabbed your hand and you asked if I was insane?" "That was different. That was before I knew you were brilliant." "Brilliant?" Evelyn stopped walking and stared at him. "I literally kidnapped your hand. You identified a problem, assessed your resources, and executed a solution in under 60 seconds. That's brilliant. Completely insane, but brilliant." Before Evelyn could respond to that unexpectedly nice compliment, they were intercepted by a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. Grayson Holt. The woman air-kissed both his cheeks with practiced precision. "I heard through the grapevine that you brought someone special tonight. This must be the famous mystery woman." "Evelyn Winston," Grayson said smoothly. "Meet Claudia Ashford. She owns the most exclusive event planning company in Chicago, the Evelyn Winston." Claudia's eyes widened. "From Winston Marketing Solutions. I've heard incredible things about your digital campaigns." Evelyn blinked in surprise. People in Chicago's social circle actually knew her work. "That's thank you," she managed. "I didn't realize our paths had crossed professionally. Darling, everyone knows about the Millennium Hotel relaunch you orchestrated. Absolutely genius work." Claudia turned to Grayson with approval. "You certainly know how to pick them. Beauty, brains, and business savvy. The triple threat." Grayson felt something weird happen in his chest, a surge of actual pride at hearing Evelyn praised, which made no sense since he'd known her for exactly 93 minutes. "I'm the lucky one," he heard himself saying, and was surprised to realize he kind of meant it. "Oh, you two are adorable." Claudia clasped her hands together. "I simply must introduce you around. There are some people here who would love to meet Chicago's newest power couple." "Power couple?" The words hit both Evelyn and Grayson like a splash of cold water. They were supposed to be fake dating, not actually networking as a unit. But before either could object, Claudia was steering them toward a group of impeccably dressed people who looked like they'd stepped off the cover of Chicago Business Weekly. "Everyone," Claudia announced, "meet Grayson Holt and Evelyn Winston." What followed was a blur of introductions, handshakes, and conversations that Evelyn couldn't quite believe were happening. The CEO of a major tech company wanted to discuss a potential marketing partnership. A prominent real estate investor was interested in Holt Development's upcoming projects. A society columnist was asking about their romantic timeline for her weekly feature. Through it all, Grayson played the role of attentive boyfriend perfectly. He kept his hand on the small of Evelyn's back, included her in every business conversation, and somehow managed to make her sound like the most fascinating woman in Chicago. Evelyn has this incredible ability to see market trends before they happen. He was telling the tech CEO she predicted the shift toward experiential marketing 18 months before it became industry standard. Evelyn stared at him. She had written a blog post about experiential marketing trends. But how did he know that? I may have done some research while you were in the bathroom, he whispered when they had a moment alone. You researched me? Know your fake girlfriend. Know your enemy, he said with a grin that was becoming dangerously appealing. Am I the enemy in this scenario? Jury's still out. Their banter was interrupted by the arrival of Grandfather Winston, who appeared beside them like a well-dressed tornado. Grayson, my boy. He boomed loud enough to draw attention from nearby tables. I've been telling everyone about our upcoming business discussion. I hope you're prepared for some exciting opportunities. Evelyn felt Grayson tense beside her. I'm looking forward to hearing about your ventures, sir. Excellent. In fact, I've taken the liberty of arranging a small gathering tomorrow morning. Just a few key investors, some city planning officials, maybe a representative from the mayor's office. Grayson's smile became slightly strained. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. sharp, my private club downtown. We can discuss the waterfront development project I've been planning. $47 million in initial investment. But the profit potential. Grandfather Winston's eyes gleamed. Well, let's just say it could be very good for the right family member's husband. The words hit Evelyn like a truck. Family member's husband, as in she'd have to actually marry Grayson to get the inheritance. And now her grandfather was dragging him into legitimate business deals that could affect Grayson's actual career. Grandpa, she said quickly, maybe we should. Nonsense. Grandfather Winston waved her off. Business waits for no one. Grayson understands. Don't you, son? All eyes at nearby tables were now focused on them. Evelyn could practically feel the weight of expectations, social pressure, and family politics crushing down on her shoulders. Grayson, meanwhile, was doing rapid mental calculations. A meeting with city officials in the mayor's office wasn't something he could fake his way through. These people would expect actual architectural plans, environmental impact studies, financial projections. I'd be honored to attend, he heard himself saying, because backing out now would raise too many questions. Wonderful. Grandfather Winston clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to rattle his teeth. I'll have my assistant send you all the preliminary documents tonight. As Grandfather Winston walked away, probably to tell more people about his brilliant future grandson-in-law, Evelyn and Grayson stood in horrified silence. Did he just invite you to a legitimate business meeting with city officials, Evelyn whispered, about a $47 million project that he wants to discuss as your future husband? They looked at each other with the dawning realization that their fake relationship had just jumped from harmless white lie to potential business fraud. We have to tell him the truth, Evelyn said. Right now, before this gets any worse. Agreed. Let's go find him. Evelyn, Grayson, Beatrice appeared in front of them like an evil fairy godmother, wearing a smile that could have powered a small city, having fun at my reception. Congratulations, Beatrice, Grayson said politely. Beautiful ceremony. Thank you. You know, I've been thinking about what you said earlier about Evelyn waiting for the right person. It's so interesting how people change, isn't it? Uh-oh. Evelyn recognized that tone. Beatrice was building up to something. Beatrice continued, her voice carrying just far enough for nearby guests to overhear. Just 6 months ago, Evelyn was telling the whole family that she'd never get married. Remember, Evelyn? You said marriage was an outdated institution designed to trap women in domestic servitude. The conversations at nearby tables began to quiet down. People were listening. That was taken out of context. Evelyn said quickly, was it? Because I distinctly remember you saying that any woman who gave up her independence for a man was betraying the feminist movement. Your exact words at Easter dinner. Grayson felt Evelyn's hand tremble in his. She was being systematically humiliated at her own cousin's wedding, and for some reason, that made him angrier than he'd been in years. You know what's interesting, Beatrice? Grayson said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made boardrooms go silent. I find that the strongest, most independent women make the best partners. They choose to be with someone because they want to, not because they need to. That kind of strength is incredibly attractive. He turned to look at Evelyn, and for a moment, the noise of the reception faded away. Evelyn didn't betray anything. She just found someone worth changing her mind for. The sincerity in his voice was so convincing that even Evelyn almost believed it. The guests who'd been eavesdropping sighed romantically. Beatrice's triumphant expression crumbled. "How sweet," Beatrice managed, clearly searching for another angle of attack. That's when the band leader approached with a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our first special dance. We'd like to invite all the couples to join the bride and groom on the dance floor." Evelyn's blood turned to ice water. Dancing in front of everyone while pretending to be madly in love with a man she'd met 2 hours ago? Oh, perfect. Beatrice clapped her hands together with malicious glee. "Evelyn and Grayson simply must dance. I insist." Actually, Evelyn started to say, "I don't really dance." She's being modest. Grayson finished. "Evelyn's an amazing dancer." Evelyn stared at him like he'd grown a second head. She hadn't danced with a man since her high school prom, and that had ended with her date, getting his foot stepped on so hard he needed ice. "Wonderful." The band leader beamed. "Right this way, folks." Before Evelyn could protest, Grayson was leading her onto the dance floor. The opening notes of a slow, romantic song filled the air. Other couples were already swaying together, lost in their own private worlds. "I can't dance," Evelyn hissed, as Grayson pulled her into his arms. "Sure you can. Just follow my lead." "No, you don't understand. I literally cannot dance. I have the coordination of a drunk giraffe." "Relax," Grayson murmured, his hand settling on her waist. "Trust me." And somehow, impossibly, she did. Grayson was a good leader, confident and steady, guiding her through simple steps that even her coordination could handle. After a few moments, Evelyn found herself actually relaxing into the rhythm. "See," Grayson said softly, "you're a natural." "You're just a good teacher," she replied. Then immediately wondered why she'd said something so intimate. They were close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, close enough to notice that he had a tiny scar near his left temple, close enough to catch herself wondering what it would be like if this was real. "Evelyn," Grayson said quietly. "Yeah? When this is over, when we figure out how to get out of this mess, would you maybe want to?" He was interrupted by a commotion at the edge of the dance floor. A man in an expensive suit was arguing with wedding security, demanding to be let in. "I'm telling you, I need to speak with Grayson Holt immediately. It's urgent business." Grayson's face went white. "That's my business partner. The one who texted you? The one who definitely doesn't know I have a fake girlfriend?" The man spotted Grayson on the dance floor and began waving frantically. "Grayson, there you are. We need to talk now." Every head at the reception turned to look at them. The music stopped. Grandfather Winston was approaching with a look of intense interest, and Evelyn realized that their carefully constructed house of lies was about to come crashing down in the most spectacular way possible. "What do we do?" she whispered. Grayson looked at his partner, then at Grandfather Winston, then at the 70-plus wedding guests who were all staring at them expectantly. "We improvise," he said grimly, "and pray we don't end up in federal prison for business fraud." As his business partner pushed through the crowd toward them, Grayson made a split-second decision that would either save them or destroy them both. He spun Evelyn around dramatically, dipped her low, and kissed her in front of the entire wedding reception. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, and Evelyn discovered that kissing Grayson Holt was nothing like she'd expected. It was better. The kiss lasted exactly 4.5 seconds. Evelyn knew because she counted every single one, even while her brain was short-circuiting and her knees were going weak, and the entire wedding reception was cheering, like they just witnessed the winning touchdown at the Super Bowl. When Grayson finally pulled her back upright, Evelyn's world tilted sideways, not because of the dramatic dip, though that had been impressively smooth for a fake boyfriend, but because of the way he was looking at her, like he was just as surprised by what had happened as she was. "Well," she breathed. "That was effective," Grayson finished, though his voice sounded rougher than usual. "Very effective," she agreed, trying to ignore the fact that her lips were still tingling. The applause was finally dying down, but before either of them could process what had just happened, Grayson's business partner was pushing through the crowd like a man on a mission. Grayson, Nathan Fitzgerald, was 42, perpetually stressed, and currently looked like he was one business crisis away from a complete breakdown. "Thank goodness I found you. We have a situation." "Nathan," Grayson said carefully, "this is Evelyn Winston." "Evelyn, my business partner, Nathan Fitzgerald." Nathan barely glanced at Evelyn before turning back to Grayson with wild eyes. The Thompson project just fell through completely. They're pulling out of the entire development deal. $28 million in projected revenue. Gone. Evelyn felt Grayson's hand tighten around hers. $28 million was apparently the kind of money that could make even someone like Grayson Holt break a sweat. What happened? Grayson asked, his voice deadly calm. Environmental concerns. The city council is demanding a complete environmental impact reassessment. Could take months, maybe years. Thompson's investors don't want to wait. Nathan finally seemed to notice they were surrounded by wedding guests. Sorry, I know this isn't the time or place. But no, it's fine, Grayson said, though Evelyn could see the tension in his jaw. We'll discuss it tomorrow. Actually, Grandfather Winston appeared beside them like he'd been summoned by the mention of large sums of money. This sounds like exactly the kind of challenge my waterfront project could help solve. Nathan blinked in confusion. I'm sorry. Who are you? Nathan, Evelyn said quickly. Meet my grandfather, Harrison Winston. Grandpa, this is Grayson's business partner. Winston? Nathan's eyes widened as recognition dawned. Winston Enterprises? The Harrison Winston? The very same. Grandfather Winston beamed, and I was just telling Grayson about a $47 million opportunity that could more than compensate for his recent setback. Evelyn watched in horror as Nathan's expression shifted from confusion to intense interest. This was exactly what they'd been trying to avoid, mixing Grayson's real business with their fake relationship. $47 million. Nathan repeated. What kind of project are we talking about? Waterfront development, premium residential and commercial space. The city's already fast-tracked the permits for family-connected businesses. Grandfather Winston's smile turned sly. And Grayson is about to become family. The words hung in the air like a neon sign advertising their deception. Evelyn felt her stomach drop into her shoes. Nathan turned to stare at Grayson with the expression of someone who'd just discovered his business partner had been leading a double life. Family? Grayson? What is he talking about? Well, Grayson said slowly, Evelyn and I are engaged. Beatrice appeared out of nowhere, carrying a champagne flute, and wearing the smile of someone who just won the lottery. Didn't you tell him, Grayson, about your proposal? The entire reception area went dead silent. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward them. Even the band stopped playing mid-note. Evelyn's vision started to tunnel. Engaged. Engaged. Beatrice had just escalated their fake relationship from dating to planning a wedding in front of 70-plus people, including business associates and a grandfather with $47 million in development contracts. Proposal? Nathan repeated faintly. Grayson started, then stopped. How exactly did one explain that the engagement was news to both parties involved? It just happened. Beatrice continued with malicious glee. Right there on the dance floor, we all saw it. The romantic dip, the passionate kiss. It was like something out of a movie. You proposed during a dance. Nathan looked like he was questioning everything he thought he knew about his business partner. It was spontaneous, Evelyn heard herself saying, though her voice sounded like it was coming from very far away. Very romantic. Spontaneous. Grandfather Winston clapped his hands together. Just like your grandmother and me, she proposed to me, you know, during a waltz at the country club. Most unconventional thing anyone had ever seen. Wait, had Evelyn just accidentally implied that she had proposed to Grayson in front of everyone at her cousin's wedding? The crowd was starting to murmur excitedly. Someone shouted, "Congratulations!" From the back, Aunt Margaret was already crying happy tears. The photographer was snapping pictures frantically. "When's the wedding?" someone called out. "Have you set a date?" asked another voice. "Will it be here at the estate?" The questions were coming from all directions, and Evelyn felt like she was drowning in a sea of expectations and congratulations and very expensive champagne. "We haven't," she started. "Soon," Grayson said firmly, making a decision that would either save them or damn them both. "Very soon. We don't want a long engagement." Nathan was staring at his business partner like he'd never seen him before. "Grayson, can I speak with you privately?" "Of course," Grayson said, though he looked like he'd rather face a root canal. "Evelyn, why don't you?" "Actually," Grandfather Winston interrupted. "This calls for a celebration, champagne for everyone. My granddaughter is engaged to Chicago's most eligible bachelor." What followed was complete and utter chaos. Champagne appeared from nowhere. Toasts were being made. People were taking selfies with the happy couple. The band launched into The Way You Look Tonight. As if this had all been planned, in the middle of it all, Evelyn caught sight of Beatrice, who was watching the proceedings with an expression of frustrated disbelief. Her perfect wedding had been completely upstaged by her cousin's fake engagement to a billionaire. "This is a disaster," Evelyn muttered under her breath. "The absolute worst," Grayson agreed, though he was smiling and shaking hands with well-wishers. "We're going to have to plan an actual wedding or fake our deaths and move to another country. I don't have a passport. I'll buy you one. I know people." Their surreal conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a woman in her 50s who looked like she'd stepped out of a high society magazine. "Grayson Holt," she exclaimed, air-kissing both his cheeks. "Lorelei Blackwood, from Chicago Social Magazine. I simply must get an exclusive on this engagement. Our readers will be absolutely fascinated. Chicago Social Magazine, the publication that every wealthy family in the city read religiously. If their fake engagement got featured there would be no going back." "Actually," Evelyn said desperately, "we prefer to keep our private life private." Lorelei laughed like Evelyn had just told the funniest joke in the world. "Darling, you just got engaged at the Winston wedding. This is the society event of the year. I'm already planning a 6-page spread, 6 pages in Chicago's premier social magazine about their completely fictional engagement. What's your ring size, dear?" Lorelei continued, pulling out a tablet and stylus. "Our readers will want to know everything about the engagement ring shopping process." "Ring? Engagement ring." Evelyn looked down at her bare left hand in panic. They were engaged, supposedly, but she had no ring. How had they missed such an obvious detail? "We're having it custom designed," Grayson said smoothly, though Evelyn could see the stress lines around his eyes. "Something unique, one of a kind. How romantic. And the wedding date?" "We're thinking." Evelyn started, then realized she had no idea what to say. "December," Grayson supplied. "Christmas wedding, very intimate. Family only. December." That was 4 months away. 4 months to maintain this charade, plan a fake wedding, and somehow avoid committing actual fraud in the process. "Wonderful. I'll need to schedule an engagement photo shoot. How's next weekend?" "We could do it at Grayson's penthouse. Our readers love those lifestyle pieces, engagement photos at Grayson's apartment, where they'd have to look lovingly into each other's eyes and pretend to be planning a future together." "Actually," Nathan interrupted, appearing at Grayson's elbow with the persistence of a man who would not be deterred, "I really do need to speak with Grayson. Business emergency." "Of course." Lorelei waved them away. "I'll coordinate with Evelyn about the photo shoot details. This is going to be magnificent." As Lorelei began questioning Evelyn about her dress preferences and flower choices, Grayson found himself being dragged away by Nathan toward a quiet corner of the garden. "All right," Nathan said once they were out of earshot. "What in the name of corporate liability is going on here?" Grayson ran a hand through his hair, destroying his perfect styling. "It's complicated." "Complicated, Grayson? You just got engaged to a woman you've never mentioned at a family wedding for people I've never heard you talk about. And her grandfather is offering us a $47 million deal that could save our company after the Thompson disaster. That's not complicated. That's insane. I know how it looks. Do you? Because it looks like you're either having a complete mental breakdown or you're involved in some kind of elaborate business scheme that could land us both in federal prison." Grayson looked back toward the reception, where Evelyn was surrounded by a crowd of excited relatives and still being interviewed by the Society magazine reporter. She looked absolutely terrified, and for some reason, seeing her distress made his chest tight. "It's not a scheme," he said quietly. "It's just... I was trying to help her." "Help her what?" "Commit fraud. Help her with her family. They were giving her grief about being single, and she panicked, and Grayson trailed off, realizing how ridiculous it sounded. "You what? Decided to fake an engagement worth $47 million in business contracts?" When Nathan put it like that, it sounded even worse. "Look," Grayson said, "I know this is crazy, but the Thompson deal falling through puts us in a really bad position. If Winston's waterfront project is legitimate, if it's legitimate, Grayson, you just agreed to marry his granddaughter. You can't back out of that and expect to maintain a business relationship. That was the problem, wasn't it? They'd painted themselves into a corner so completely that there was no way out that didn't involve someone getting hurt. Either Grayson would have to break Evelyn's heart publicly and humiliate her in front of her entire family, or they'd have to continue this charade until what? They actually got married? Figure it out," Nathan said firmly. "Fast. Because tomorrow morning you're meeting with city officials about a project that depends on you being engaged to Harrison Winston's granddaughter. And if they find out this is all fake, I know, Grayson said grimly. "Believe me, I know." Nathan walked away, leaving Grayson alone with his thoughts and the sound of celebration drifting from the reception. He looked back toward the party and saw Evelyn still trapped in conversation with the magazine reporter, her smile looking more strained by the minute. Without thinking about it, he started walking back toward her, not because their fake relationship required it, not because of the business implications, but because she looked like she needed rescuing. Again. "Excuse me," he said politely to Lorelei. "Mind if I steal my fiancé for a moment?" "Fiancé?" The word felt strange on his tongue, but not as strange as he'd expected. "Of course," Lorelei beamed. "Young love, I'll email you about the photo shoot. Evelyn." As soon as they were alone, Evelyn sagged against him like her strings had been cut. "This is a complete disaster," she whispered. "She wants to do engagement photos at your apartment, and she's planning a 6-page magazine spread, and someone just asked me about our honeymoon plans." "What did you tell them?" "That we're thinking about Italy." "Iponicht. I've never even been to Italy." Grayson looked down at her, really looked at her. Her perfect hair was starting to come loose from its updo. Her lipstick was gone. She looked exhausted and overwhelmed and absolutely beautiful. "Evelyn," he said quietly, "are you okay with this? Really okay? Because if you want to end this right now, we can. I'll figure out a way to explain it to my business partner and your grandfather and the society reporter. You don't have to keep doing this for me." Evelyn stared up at him in surprise. "For you, Grayson? This whole mess is my fault. You were just minding your own business when I grabbed your hand and dragged you into my family drama. And now I'm dragging you into mine. That meeting tomorrow, it's real business with real consequences. If something goes wrong, then we'll figure it out together," Evelyn said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "I got us into this mess. The least I can do is help you get through it." "Together," Grayson repeated, and something in his chest loosened. I like the sound of that. They stood there for a moment, looking at each other while chaos swirled around them. The wedding reception continued in the background, but for just a few seconds, it felt like they were in their own private bubble. Then, Grandfather Winston's voice boomed across the garden. "Where are the happy couple? Time for the engagement toast." Evelyn and Grayson looked at each other and started laughing, not the polite laughter of a fake couple putting on a show, but the slightly hysterical laughter of two people who just realized they were in way over their heads and had decided to dive deeper anyway. "Ready for round 2, Grayson asked, offering her his arm. "Ready as I'll ever be," Evelyn replied, taking his arm and letting him lead her back into the beautiful chaos they'd created. As they walked back toward the crowd of waiting family and friends, neither of them noticed Beatrice watching from the shadows, her phone in her hand and a calculating expression on her face, or that she'd been recording their entire conversation. The game was about to change again, and this time the stakes would be higher than either of them could imagine. 3 days later, Evelyn was standing in Grayson's penthouse apartment at 6:0 the morning, wearing a designer dress she couldn't afford, preparing for engagement photos for a magazine spread about a relationship that didn't exist, while trying not to hyperventilate about the business meeting that could either make or break Grayson's career. "This is fine," she muttered to herself, pacing across Grayson's living room for the 15th time. "This is totally normal. People fake engagements and accidentally commit business fraud all the time. It's probably a whole category on tax forms. Talking to yourself is generally considered a bad sign," Grayson said, emerging from his bedroom in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that made Evelyn's brain temporarily stop working. His hair was still slightly damp from the shower, and he smelled like that expensive cologne that had been driving her crazy for 3 days. "I always talk to myself when I'm having a nervous breakdown," she replied, trying not to stare at how the suit fit his shoulders like it had been designed specifically for his body. "It helps me organize my thoughts into manageable categories of panic." "And what categories are we working with today?" "Well, there's immediate terror about the engagement photos, medium-term dread about the business meeting, and existential horror about the fact that I'm wearing a $2,000 dress that I put on a credit card I can't afford to pay off." Grayson walked over to where she was wearing a path in his Persian rug and gently took her hands. "Evelyn, breathe. It's going to be okay. How can you be so calm? In 3 hours, you're going to be sitting across from city officials discussing a $47 million project that you're only involved in because you're supposedly marrying me. And before that, we have to convince a professional photographer that we're so in love we can't keep our hands off each other. Technically, because you're supposedly marrying me, you were the one who proposed, remember?" Evelyn groaned and buried her face in her hands. "Don't remind me. I still can't believe I accidentally proposed to you at my cousin's wedding, in front of 70 people, while being recorded by multiple phones. It was very romantic, very progressive. I felt very wooed, very thoroughly courted. Despite her panic, Evelyn found herself smiling. "Shut up. See, you're already feeling better. And for the record, that dress doesn't just look good on you, it looks like it was designed for you. Consider it an early engagement gift. Grayson, I can't let you pay for. You can, and you will. We're supposedly planning a life together. Couples share expenses." He paused, studying her face. "Besides, I have a confession to make." "Oh, great. What now?" "I may have already been researching engagement rings." Evelyn stared at him. "You what?" "Well, if we're going to do this, we should do it right. People are going to expect to see a ring. A really good ring. The kind of ring that says Grayson Holt doesn't do anything halfway. You've been ring shopping for our fake engagement?" "I've been ring researching. There's a difference. Shopping implies I've actually purchased something. Have you?" Grayson's smile turned slightly sheepish. "Define purchased." Before Evelyn could demand a clearer answer, the doorbell rang. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see a team of people with professional camera equipment, lighting rigs, and enough cables to wire a small building setting up in the hallway. "The photographers," Grayson said unnecessarily. "Right. The photographers who are here to take pictures of our fake engagement for a magazine that thinks we're planning a Christmas wedding, that we're definitely not having because we barely know each other." Evelyn took a deep breath that didn't help her anxiety at all. How hard can it be to look like we're in love for a few hours? The answer, it turned out, was both easier and infinitely more complicated than either of them had expected. The photography team was led by a woman named Serena, who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine herself, all dramatic cheekbones and flowing scarves, and the kind of artistic intensity that suggested she took her craft very seriously. "Darlings," she exclaimed, air-kissing both of them before they'd even been properly introduced. "I am Serena Montenegro, and I am here to capture your love story. But first, tell me, how did you know?" That moment when you realized this was the one, Evelyn and Grayson looked at each other. They hadn't prepared for existential questions about their fictional relationship. It was, Evelyn started, immediate. Grayson finished smoothly. "The moment I saw her, I knew my life had just changed completely. And you, darling?" Serena turned to Evelyn with expectant eyes. He made me feel safe," Evelyn said, surprising herself with how true that sounded. "Like I could be completely myself, even in the middle of chaos. Beautiful." Serena clapped her hands together. "This is exactly the energy we need. Now, let's begin." What followed was 3 hours of the most intense emotional acting either of them had ever done. Serena had very specific ideas about how engaged couples should look at each other, touch each other, exist in the same space. "More intimacy," she called out as Evelyn and Grayson posed on his balcony overlooking the Chicago skyline. "You're planning to spend your lives together. Show me that connection. Show me that you can't imagine existing without each other." Evelyn tried to look deeply into Grayson's eyes while simultaneously trying to ignore how nice they were gray with little flecks of blue that caught the morning light. And when he smiled, really smiled, not the polite business smile he wore in meetings, they crinkled at the corners in a way that made her stomach do odd little flips. "Perfect." Serena snapped several shots in rapid succession. "Now, Grayson, I want you to look at Evelyn like she's the most amazing thing you've ever seen. Like she's a miracle you can't quite believe is real." That was becoming less and less of a challenge. The longer this charade went on, the less it felt like acting. Evelyn was funny and smart and brave enough to grab a stranger's hand when she needed help. She was also terrible at poker, sang off-key in the shower. He could hear her through the walls when she'd stayed over the night before. Had strong opinions about everything from coffee brewing methods to urban planning policies, and could make him laugh even when he was stressed about multi-million-dollar business deals. "Gorgeous," Serena was saying. "The chemistry between you two is incredible. So natural. So effortless." They moved through the apartment, posing in different locations. Evelyn sitting on the kitchen counter while Grayson stood between her knees, his hands on her waist, both of them looking at each other like they were sharing the world's best secret. Both of them laughing at something Serena had said, but really laughing at Grayson's whispered comment about how he'd never realized engagement photos were basically a 3-hour intimacy workshop with a professional voyeur. "Now," Serena said as they finished in the bedroom, tasteful shots of them sitting on the edge of the bed, looking at each other with soft, private smiles. I want to get a few shots of the proposal recreation. Evelyn, you mentioned it happened during a dance, right? Dancing? Evelyn said weakly, her throat suddenly dry. Very romantic. Very spontaneous. Perfect. Grayson, put on some music. Something romantic. Something that makes your hearts race. I want to capture that magical moment when you both knew you wanted to spend forever together. Grayson queued up a playlist on his sound system, and soft jazz filled the apartment, the same song they danced to at the wedding reception. He walked back to Evelyn and offered her his hand with a small bow that was both playful and somehow completely sincere. Shall we dance, fiancé? We shall. Future husband. They moved together easily now. After several days of practice at family dinners and public appearances, Evelyn had gotten used to the way Grayson's hand felt on her waist. The way he smelled like expensive cologne and something uniquely him that made her want to lean closer. Grayson had gotten used to how perfectly Evelyn fit against him, how her laugh made something warm and protective spread through his chest, how dancing with her felt more natural than breathing. This is nice, Evelyn said softly as they swayed together, temporarily forgetting they had an audience. Yeah, Grayson agreed, his voice rougher than usual. It really is. Serena was moving around them, camera clicking constantly. But for a moment, it felt like they were alone, like they were just two people dancing in a beautiful apartment filled with morning light, without the weight of fake engagements and business deals and family expectations pressing down on them. Grayson, Evelyn said quietly, looking up into his face, when this is all over, when we figure out how to get out of this mess without destroying your career or my family relationships, do you think we could maybe— She was interrupted by the sharp sound of someone banging on the apartment door, with the kind of persistence that suggested they weren't going away. Grayson Holt, a voice shouted from the hallway, muffled but clearly agitated. Open up. We need to talk now. Grayson's face went white. That's Nathan. He sounds upset, Evelyn observed with masterful understatement. He sounds homicidal. The banging continued, getting more insistent. I know you're in there, and I know about the photos. We have a serious problem. Serena looked up from her camera with the kind of interest that suggested this was exactly the kind of drama that made her job exciting. Should I keep shooting? This could be very authentic behind-the-scenes content, very raw, very emotional. No, both Evelyn and Grayson said simultaneously, probably a little too loudly. Grayson walked to the door and opened it to reveal Nathan standing in the hallway, holding a tablet like it contained evidence of war crimes, and wearing the expression of a man who had discovered his business partner was either having a complete mental breakdown or involved in an elaborate criminal conspiracy. We need to talk, Nathan said grimly, pushing past Grayson into the apartment. Right now, Nathan, we're in the middle of— I don't care if you're in the middle of performing brain surgery on the president. Look at this. Nathan shoved the tablet at Grayson with shaking hands. On the screen was a video, clearly recorded on someone's phone. The quality was grainy, and the lighting was poor, but the audio was crystal clear. It was Evelyn and Grayson 3 nights ago at the wedding reception, having what they'd thought was a private conversation about the fake engagement. This is a complete disaster, Evelyn's voice said from the tablet speakers. She wants to do engagement photos at your apartment. And she's planning a 6-page magazine spread, and someone just asked me about our honeymoon plans. What did you tell them? Grayson's voice replied, that we're thinking about Italy. Ipanitst. I've never even been to Italy. Nathan paused the video and looked at them both with the expression of someone who had just watched their entire world collapse. Would you like to explain to me why there's video evidence of you two discussing your fake engagement, posted publicly on social media with hashtags? Evelyn felt like the floor had just disappeared beneath her feet, and she was falling through space. Where did you get that? Who posted it? Beatrice Winston posted it on her Instagram an hour ago with the caption, "When family members lie to steal inheritance money. Fake engagement, Winston family fraud." It's been shared 237 times in the past hour. It's trending on Chicago social media. Trending. Grayson closed his eyes and leaned against the doorframe like he needed the support to stay upright. How bad is this on a scale of 1 to complete career destruction? Well, let's see. Nathan consulted his tablet with shaking hands. Your fake fiancé's cousin has just exposed your fake engagement to everyone who matters in Chicago society. The business meeting you're supposed to attend in 2 hours is with people who have definitely seen this video. I've already gotten 3 calls asking if it's true. Harrison Winston's lawyer called me 45 minutes ago asking about potential fraud charges, and I just got off the phone with a reporter from Chicago Business Journal who wants a statement about Holt Development Group's questionable business ethics. Fraud charges? Evelyn squeaked, her voice going up about 3 octaves. Apparently, pretending to be engaged to someone to gain access to business opportunities is considered deceptive business practices in the state of Illinois. Who knew? Serena, who had been listening to this conversation with growing excitement and hadn't stopped taking pictures, raised her hand enthusiastically. Should I be documenting this? Because this is incredibly dramatic, and our readers absolutely love behind-the-scenes relationship drama. This could be a whole separate feature. No, 3 voices said in unison, loud enough to probably be heard in the hallway. Right, Serena said, looking disappointed but beginning to pack up her equipment. I'll just go. But I'm keeping the photos we already took. They're absolutely gorgeous, some of the most romantic shots I've ever captured. After the photography team left, taking their lights and cameras and artistic intensity with them, the 3 of them stood in Grayson's living room in the kind of silence that usually preceded either natural disasters or complete nervous breakdowns. So, Evelyn said finally, her voice very small, how much trouble are we in, realistically, on a scale of 1 to 10? Nathan consulted his tablet again, scrolling through what appeared to be an endless stream of notifications. About a 27. Is there any way to fix this? Any way at all? Nathan was quiet for a long moment, clearly thinking through options. Well, he said slowly, you could actually get married. Both Evelyn and Grayson stared at him like he'd just suggested they take up professional sword swallowing. I'm completely serious, Nathan continued, warming to his theme. If you're actually engaged, really engaged, legitimately planning to get married, then it's not fraud. Unconventional. Maybe. Unusual timing, definitely, but not illegal. Nathan, Grayson said very carefully, are you suggesting we commit marriage fraud to avoid business fraud? I'm suggesting you turn a fake engagement into a real one to save your company, avoid federal prison, and prevent your family from disowning you. Nathan replied matter-of-factly, also, it would be great for business. Power couples are very popular right now. Evelyn sat down heavily on Grayson's couch, putting her head in her hands. This is insane. We barely know each other. 3 days ago, I didn't even know his last name. You know each other well enough to convince 70 wedding guests, a professional photographer, and apparently half of Chicago society that you're in love, Nathan pointed out with the persistence of a man who was trying to save his business. That takes either incredible acting skills or actual chemistry. That was acting, Evelyn protested, though even as she said it, she wasn't entirely sure it was true. Was it? Nathan looked between them with the expression of someone who was seeing something they hadn't noticed themselves. Because from where I was standing at that wedding, and from what I just witnessed during your photo shoot, it looked pretty real to me. Grayson and Evelyn looked at each other across the living room. The honest truth was that somewhere between the fake dancing and the protective speeches and the engagement photos that felt less and less like acting, the line between pretending and reality had gotten very, very blurry. Even if we wanted to consider something that crazy, Evelyn said quietly. The business meeting is in 2 hours. It's too late to change anything now. The video is out there. People know it was fake. Actually, Grayson said slowly, his business mind starting to work through the problem. Maybe it's not too late. Both Evelyn and Nathan turned to look at him with varying degrees of hope and skepticism. What if we go to the meeting and tell them the truth? The truth? Nathan looked like Grayson had suggested they all take up professional fire eating as a hobby. Which truth? The truth where you fake an engagement for money? Or the truth where you're now considering a real engagement to avoid fraud charges? A different truth, a more nuanced truth. Grayson began pacing, his business mind taking over the way it did when he was working through a complex problem. What if we tell them that, yes, our relationship started unconventionally, but it turned into something real very quickly, that we're choosing to make it legitimate? Keep talking, Nathan said cautiously, clearly intrigued despite himself. Look, Harrison Winston is a businessman above everything else. He understands that sometimes the best partnerships start with mutual benefit and grow into something more substantial. What if we position this as an evolution, a business relationship that became personal? Evelyn was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Are you saying what I think you're saying? Grayson stopped pacing and looked at her seriously. More seriously than he'd looked at anything in years. I'm saying maybe Nathan is right. Maybe we should consider making this real. Real. Like actually engaged. Real. Like planning an actual wedding. Real. I know it sounds crazy. It doesn't just sound crazy. It is crazy. We've known each other for 3 days, 3 days. People take longer to choose a new phone plan. 3 days during which we've spent almost every waking moment together. 3 days during which you've met my business partner. I've met your entire extended family, and we've somehow managed to convince everyone who matters that we're perfect for each other. Evelyn stood up and began pacing, her anxiety manifesting in rapid movement, but that was all fake, all of it. The dancing, the photos, the sweet things we said to each other, it was all performance. Was it? Grayson caught her hand as she walked past him, stopping her mid-pace and gently pulling her to face him. Evelyn, look at me. Really. Look at me. She looked up into those gray eyes that had become so familiar over the past 3 days and felt her heart do that stupid fluttering thing it had been doing more and more often. The business stuff, the inheritance, the magazine photos, the family pressure, that's all external noise. But this, he gestured between them with his free hand. Whatever this is that's been happening between us when we forget we're supposed to be acting, that's not fake. Evelyn's heart was beating so hard, she was sure he could hear it. Grayson, I know this is crazy. I know it's fast. I know it violates every rational decision-making process known to mankind. But I also know that I've never met anyone like you. You're brave and funny and brilliant. And when you grabbed my hand 3 days ago, you didn't just save yourself from embarrassment. You changed my life. You changed mine too, Evelyn whispered, the words coming out before she could stop them. So maybe this isn't about avoiding fraud charges or saving business deals or getting inheritance money. Maybe this is about two people who found each other in the most ridiculous way possible and decided not to let go. Nathan cleared his throat loudly. This is all very romantic. And I'm genuinely happy for you both. But we still have a business meeting in 90 minutes, with people who have seen video evidence of your fake engagement. We need a plan. Grayson looked at Evelyn, still holding her hand, still looking into her eyes like he was trying to read her soul. What do you say? Want to go tell some very important city officials that we're crazy enough to turn a fake engagement into a real one? Evelyn looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who had defended her against Beatrice's attacks, who had danced with her even though she had the coordination of a drunk giraffe, who had somehow made the most insane situation of her life feel like an adventure instead of a disaster. At the man who made her laugh, who made her feel safe, who made her want to be brave enough to take impossible chances. Yes, she said, surprised by how certain she sounded. Let's go be crazy together. 2 hours later, the conference room at Winston Enterprises felt like the setting for either a corporate merger or a war crimes tribunal. Harrison Winston sat at the head of a massive mahogany table, flanked by his lawyers, the city's planning commissioner, a representative from the mayor's office, and 2 other men Grayson recognized as major investors in Chicago real estate development. Evelyn and Grayson sat across from them, holding hands under the table, trying to project confidence while internally preparing for either vindication or complete professional destruction. Well, Harrison Winston said, steepling his fingers and looking at them with an expression that was impossible to read, this is certainly an interesting situation. Nathan, who was sitting beside Grayson and looked like he was one stress-induced heart palpitation away from needing medical attention, cleared his throat. Mr. Winston, if I could explain— Actually, Grayson interrupted, squeezing Evelyn's hand for courage. I think Evelyn and I should explain. By all means, the planning commissioner said dryly. We're all very curious to hear your explanation for whatever this is. Grayson took a deep breath and made a decision that would either save their lives or end their careers. You're right to question our relationship. It did start unconventionally. Evelyn looked at him in surprise. She'd expected him to try to maintain the charade, not lead with honesty. 3 days ago, Grayson continued. Evelyn was at her cousin's wedding, facing family pressure about her single status. In a moment of panic, she grabbed my hand and claimed I was her boyfriend. Without his permission, Evelyn added. Because if we're being honest, we might as well be completely honest. I basically ambushed him. And I went along with it, Grayson said. Because she looked like she needed help. And I've never been able to ignore someone who needed help. Harrison Winston leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Go on. What happened next? Evelyn said, finding her voice, was that we discovered we worked well together, really well. We could anticipate each other's thoughts, support each other through difficult situations, make each other laugh, even when everything was falling apart. The business opportunity, Grayson continued, was legitimate interest on my part. Holt Development Group is always looking for projects that align with our values and capabilities. But I won't lie, the family connection made it more appealing. What changed? the mayor's representative asked. According to the video, you were discussing how to end this charade. Evelyn and Grayson looked at each other, and something passed between them that didn't require words. We realized, Evelyn said softly, that somewhere between the fake dancing and the pretend conversations and the engagement photos, we'd stopped pretending. We fell in love, Grayson said simply, completely by accident, in the most ridiculous circumstances possible, but genuinely and completely. So, you're saying, the planning commissioner said slowly, that what started as a deception became real. We're saying, Evelyn replied, that sometimes the best things happen when you're not planning them, that sometimes grabbing onto something unexpected leads you exactly where you're supposed to be. The room was quiet for a long moment. Harrison Winston studied them both with the sharp eyes of a man who had built an empire by reading people accurately. Show me your hands, he said suddenly. Sir? Grayson asked. Your hands. Both of you. On the table, confused, Evelyn and Grayson placed their clasped hands on the mahogany surface. Harrison Winston smiled for the first time since they'd entered the room. You haven't let go of each other since you sat down. Even while we've been discussing business fraud and criminal charges, even when you were explaining how this all started as a lie, Evelyn looked down and realized he was right. They'd been holding hands unconsciously, providing each other comfort and support without even thinking about it. That, Harrison Winston said, is not the behavior of two people running a con. That's the behavior of two people who have found something worth holding on to. The tension in the room shifted, became lighter somehow. The waterfront project, the planning commissioner said, is legitimate regardless of your relationship status. Holt Development Group's proposal was the strongest we received. But, the mayor's representative added, we do appreciate your honesty about how you came to be involved. Sometimes, Harrison Winston said, standing up and extending his hand to Grayson, the best business partnerships start with a handshake and a leap of faith. I don't see why marriages should be any different. As they shook hands, Evelyn felt a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying lift from her shoulders. They'd told the truth, and somehow, incredibly, it had worked. One more thing, Harrison Winston said as they prepared to leave. That inheritance everyone's been whispering about. Evelyn and Grayson both froze. Consider it an early wedding gift. You'll need it for the house. House? Evelyn asked faintly. Well, you can't live in that penthouse forever. Too small for the grandchildren I'm expecting within the next few years. As they left Winston Enterprises, walking out into the Chicago afternoon sunshine, Evelyn and Grayson were quiet for several blocks. So, Evelyn said finally, We're really doing this. We're really doing this, Grayson confirmed. We're going to plan an actual wedding in December. Christmas wedding. Family only. Very intimate. I'll need a dress. A real dress. I'll need a tux. A real tux. We'll need rings. Real rings. We'll need to write vows. Real vows. They looked at each other and started laughing again. The same slightly hysterical laughter from the wedding reception. But happier somehow. Lighter. More genuine. You know what the funny thing is? Evelyn said when she could breathe again. What? I think I'm actually falling in love with you. Really. Truly. Completely in love. Grayson stopped walking and turned to face her fully, right there on the busy Chicago sidewalk with people streaming around them. His smile could have powered the entire city. Good, he said, cupping her face in his hands. Because I'm definitely, absolutely, head over heels in love with you. He kissed her then. And this time there was no audience, no cameras, no pressure to perform for anyone else. This time, it was just them choosing each other. Choosing this crazy, beautiful mess they'd created, choosing love over logic and faith over fear. When they finally broke apart, Evelyn was grinning so hard her cheeks hurt. So what happens now? She asked. Now? Grayson said, taking her hand and starting to walk again. We figure out how to plan a wedding in 4 months. Run our businesses. Deal with your family who are going to want to be involved in every single decision, and your business partner, who's probably going to have opinions about our unconventional timeline, and the magazine photos that are going to make us Chicago's most famous fake, turned real couple. Evelyn groaned. I forgot about the magazine. What are we going to tell them? The truth, Grayson said, that sometimes the best love stories start with someone brave enough to grab a stranger's hand and hold on. The truth, Evelyn repeated, liking the sound of it. Together, Grayson agreed, always together. 4 months later, Christmas Eve, the Winston estate had been transformed into a winter wonderland. Twinkling lights were strung through every tree, candles flickered in every window, and snow was falling gently outside. like nature had decided to provide the perfect backdrop for a Christmas Eve wedding. The ceremony was everything a small, intimate family wedding should be. 60 guests, including Nathan, who had become surprisingly invested in their relationship. Serena, the photographer, who was documenting everything for what she called the greatest love story sequel ever, and even Beatrice, who had eventually apologized for the social media sabotage and had been cautiously welcomed back into the family fold. Evelyn stood in the bridal suite, looking at herself in the mirror and trying to process that this was actually happening. The dress was perfect, simple, elegant, and comfortable enough that she could actually dance in it. The ring on her finger caught the light and sparkled like captured starlight. Ready? Aunt Margaret peeked her head in, tears already threatening her carefully applied makeup. Ready, Evelyn said, and realized she meant it completely. The walk down the aisle felt like a dream. The room was full of people who loved her, who had watched this crazy story unfold and had chosen to believe in it. But all she could see was Grayson standing at the altar, in a perfectly fitted tuxedo, looking at her like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "Hi. Beautiful. Hi, yourself. Handsome," she whispered back. The ceremony was perfect in its simplicity. When it came time for vows, they spoke from their hearts about grabbing onto unexpected chances, about finding love in the most unlikely places, about choosing each other every single day. "I promise," Evelyn said, holding Grayson's hands and speaking loud enough for everyone to hear, "to never let go of your hand, even when I'm being completely crazy, especially when I'm being completely crazy." "I promise," Grayson replied, his voice thick with emotion, "to always be the kind of man worth grabbing onto even in the middle of wedding receptions, even in the middle of business meetings, even in the middle of whatever chaos we create next." The kiss that sealed their marriage lasted longer than 4.5 seconds. Much longer. Long enough that the photographer got at least 50 shots. Long enough that the guests started cheering and applauding. Long enough that both of them forgot there was anyone else in the world. When they finally broke apart, they were both laughing and crying and radiating the kind of joy that made everyone around them believe in happy endings. The reception was a celebration in the truest sense. There was dancing. Evelyn had actually gotten better with practice. There were toasts that made everyone laugh and cry, and the kind of happiness that seemed to fill every corner of the room. Late in the evening, when most of the guests had gone home and only family remained, Evelyn found herself on the dance floor in her husband's arms, swaying to soft music, while snow continued to fall outside the windows. "Any regrets?" Grayson asked softly, "about grabbing a stranger's hand at a wedding?" "Best decision I ever made," Evelyn replied without hesitation. Even though it led to fake engagements and magazine, photo shoots and business meetings that could have ended in federal prison, especially because of all that. Evelyn looked up at him with eyes full of love and mischief. "Besides, someone had to teach you how to dance properly. You taught me a lot more than dancing." "Yeah? Like what?" "Like how to take chances, like how to trust someone completely, like how to be happy. Really, genuinely, thoroughly happy." Evelyn stood on her tiptoes and kissed him right there in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by fairy lights and family, and the kind of love that made everything else fade away. "I love you, Grayson Holt." She whispered against his lips. "I love you too, Evelyn Holt," he whispered back. And as they danced together under the twinkling lights, both of them couldn't help but think that sometimes the best things in life really did start with grabbing a stranger's hand and holding on tight. 1 year later, their first anniversary, the Holt Development Group's waterfront project, had been featured on the cover of Architectural Digest, hailed as a masterpiece of sustainable urban development that would set the standard for future projects. Winston Marketing Solutions had expanded to include offices in 3 cities, largely due to referrals from impressed clients who'd heard about Evelyn's innovative approach to relationship building, which had become industry code for the woman who turned a fake engagement into a business empire. Beatrice had married her tax attorney and was pregnant with twins. She and Evelyn had not only reconciled, but had become genuine friends, bonding over their shared experience of surviving Winston family drama and Beatrice's new appreciation for Evelyn's commitment to authenticity. Nathan had indeed started dating Serena after she'd approached him at the wedding reception with a business proposal about documenting real love in the age of social media. They were now living together and collaborating on a photography book about modern relationships. Harrison Winston had become the doting grandfather-in-law he'd always wanted to be, regularly stopping by their new house, a beautiful Victorian they'd bought 6 months after the wedding, with business advice, family stories, and not so subtle hints about great-grandchildren. And Grayson and Evelyn? They were blissfully, chaotically, perfectly happy in the way that only people who have found their perfect match can be. They fought about whose turn it was to load the dishwasher, collaborated on business projects that made both their companies more successful, took dancing lessons every Thursday night, where Evelyn was still improving, but would never be accused of natural grace, and had developed the kind of inside jokes and shared glances that made other couples slightly jealous. On their first wedding anniversary, Grayson surprised Evelyn with a trip to Italy, the honeymoon destination she'd panicked about during that first magazine interview, which felt like a lifetime ago. As they stood on a balcony overlooking the Tuscan countryside, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink, Evelyn realized that grabbing his hand that day had led to not just a husband, but a best friend, a business partner, and a love that was better than anything she could have planned or imagined. "Happy anniversary, Mrs. Holt," Grayson said, pulling her close against his side as they watched the Italian sunset. "Happy anniversary, Mr. Holt," she replied, then grinned with that mischievous expression he'd fallen in love with. "Want to know a secret? Always. I would grab your hand again. Every time, in every timeline, at every wedding reception in the multiverse. Even knowing all the chaos it would cause." "Good," Grayson said, turning to face her fully, his gray eyes soft with love and laughter. "Because I'd let you catch me every single time. Even with all the fake engagement drama and magazine photo shoots and near fraud charges, especially because of all that, you made my life infinitely more interesting and complicated. The best things usually are." Evelyn laughed, the sound carrying across the Tuscan hills. "You know what I realized today?" "What's that?" "We never actually had a proper first date. We went straight from fake relationship to engagement photos, to business meetings, to wedding planning." Grayson considered this seriously. "You're absolutely right. That's a significant oversight in our relationship timeline. Very significant. We should probably fix that." "I agree completely. What did you have in mind?" Evelyn gestured to the romantic Italian countryside around them, the sunset, the wine, the complete privacy of their villa balcony. "Well, we're in Italy. We have wine. We have time. Want to have our first date right now? On our first anniversary in Tuscany as a married couple? Why not? We've done everything else backwards." Grayson sat down his wine glass and turned to face her fully, suddenly formal. "Evelyn Holt, would you like to have dinner with me tonight?" "I would love to, Grayson Holt," she replied, playing along, "but I should warn you, I'm married." "Really? Tell me about your husband." "Oh, he's wonderful, handsome, successful, great dancer, terrible at loading the dishwasher. But nobody's perfect. He sounds like a lucky man. The luckiest. I grabbed his hand at a wedding, and he was stuck with me." "Stuck with you?" Grayson pulled her into his arms, spinning her around on the balcony as she laughed. "Evelyn Holt, getting caught by you was the best thing that ever happened to me, even though you're chaos incarnate. Especially because I'm chaos incarnate. Life was boring before you grabbed my hand. And now every day is an adventure. Sometimes terrifying, always interesting, never boring." As if summoned by their conversation, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it and started laughing. "What?" Grayson asked. "It's from Beatrice," she said, and I quote, "Hope you're having fun in Italy. By the way, Grandfather Winston just asked me if you two are planning to give him great-grandchildren soon. I told him to ask you directly. Also, there's a reporter from Chicago Social Magazine who wants to do a one-year anniversary follow-up story. Love you both." Grayson groaned. "We can't escape, can we? Even in Italy. Do you want to escape from the media attention and family pressure?" "Absolutely. From you? Never." "Good answer." Evelyn kissed him softly, then pulled back with a thoughtful expression. "You know what's funny?" "What?" "A year ago, the idea of anyone asking me about children would have sent me into a complete panic spiral. Now, Grayson prompted when she trailed off. "Now, it doesn't sound scary at all. It sounds like the next adventure." Grayson's eyes lit up with surprise, and something that looked very much like hope. "Really?" "Really. I mean, not immediately. We should probably figure out how to load the dishwasher properly first. But someday, little versions of us running around, causing chaos. They definitely cause chaos with our genetics. The absolute worst kind of chaos. They'd probably grab strangers' hands at their own birthday parties. Poor strangers wouldn't know what hit them. We should probably warn our future babysitters. We should probably start practicing loading the dishwasher." They were both laughing now, standing on their Italian balcony. talking about a future that felt as natural and inevitable as breathing. "Evelyn," Grayson said softly, "thank you. For what? For being brave enough to grab my hand that day, for changing my life, for making every day better than the last." "Thank you," Evelyn replied. "For being worth grabbing onto, for dancing with me, even though I was terrible at it, for defending me against Beatrice, for making me believe in fairy tales." "This isn't a fairy tale," Grayson said, his voice serious. "It's better." "Better how?" "Fairy tales are perfect. This is real, messy, and complicated, and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. You're getting very philosophical for our fake first date." "I'm Italian wine philosophical. It's different." "Show me," Evelyn challenged. Grayson picked up his wine glass and cleared his throat dramatically. "Evelyn Holt, you are the most beautiful chaos I've ever encountered. You turn my perfectly organized life upside down on a daily basis, and I wouldn't change a single moment of it." "That's pretty good." "My turn." Evelyn picked up her own glass. "Grayson Holt, you're the steady calm in my storm of crazy. You make me want to be brave enough to grab onto impossible things and hold on tight." "To impossible things," Grayson said, raising his glass. "To holding on tight," Evelyn replied, clinking her glass against his. As they drank their wine and watched the last of the sunset fade into deep purple twilight, both of them felt the deep contentment that comes from being exactly where you're supposed to be, with exactly the right person at exactly the right moment. "So," Evelyn said eventually, "how was our first date?" "Perfect. When can I see you again?" "Well, I'm free tomorrow, the day after that, and pretty much every day for the rest of our lives." "I'll take it," Grayson said solemnly. "All of it. Every single day. Even the chaotic ones, especially the chaotic ones." As they headed inside for dinner, Evelyn's phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from Nathan and Serena. They were at a wedding, apparently. They were becoming the go-to photographers for Chicago society events, and Nathan was holding a sign that read, "Inspired by Grayson and Evelyn." Sometimes the best relationships start with grabbing a stranger's hand. "We've started a trend," Evelyn observed, showing Grayson the photo, "a very dangerous trend. Wedding receptions across Chicago are going to become incredibly chaotic." "Good. The world needs more chaos, more people grabbing onto unexpected chances, more love stories that start with panic and end with perfect happiness." "Exactly." As they settled down for dinner at their private villa, with candles flickering and Italian music playing softly in the background, Grayson reached across the table and took Evelyn's hand. "What are you doing?" she asked with a smile. "Just making sure you don't let go." "Never," Evelyn said, squeezing his hand tight. "I'm never letting go." And she meant it. Through whatever chaos came next business ventures, family drama, potential children who would undoubtedly inherit their parents' flair for the dramatic. She was holding on tight to this man who had let her catch him, who had turned her moment of panic into a lifetime of love. Outside their villa, the Italian countryside was peaceful and perfect. Inside, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely way possible were living proof that sometimes the best things in life happen when you're brave enough to reach out and grab them, and they lived happily, chaotically, perfectly ever after. The end.